Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Maria Tranquilli, and I'm a program manager at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. We will open up for live Q&A at the end of this event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. And none of what we do would be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, NZTE, and Microsoft for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions. During these unique times, we are curious about sentiment and how you are feeling within our community. We would like to start by taking two different polls. Poll number 1, launching now. How are you currently feeling? Please let us know. Sharing those results, it looks like we have a very optimistic group with us today. Wonderful. And finally, what is currently keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales, marketing? Is it scaling, pivoting your team, or surviving? Thank you all for contributing, sharing those results. It looks like scaling and pivoting are some of the top things keeping us up at night. And I think Sergio today will actually cover some of these things. So wonderful. Thank you all so much. So without further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest, Sergio Marrero, CEO of Rebel One. He is a serial entrepreneur, founder, investor, and coach who graduated from the Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He previously has worked at Pepsi Cola, Teach for America, and the Deloitte Consulting Strategy Operations Group. Sergio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Maria, for the warm introduction. So happy to be here.
Thank you.
So I'll dive right in. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and feel free to put questions in the chat as we go. What I will do is I'm going to share my screen now and go through a short presentation on mastering the pitch. So a little bit about, and thank you NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and the team there, and Maria, for initially reaching out and making this happen. So a little bit about my background. You might be saying, who's Sergio? So most of my experience has been on the founder side, focused on EdTech investing. I ended up launching 2 EdTech ventures, and I had my fair share of battle scars and challenges. Joined a team that was creating an investor training program. Took some of my founders training, kind of flipped it on its head, and trained investors and started doing investments, and have been in the investment space since. We started Rebel One really to accelerate impact founders, aligned with creating a better world. So we're focused on for-profit organizations, but again, women and underrepresented founders have been a focus, and also impact areas focus on health, climate, and future of work, finance, and a number of other areas aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. While I was at Harvard Business School and the Kennedy School of Government, I launched a venture and ended up pitching at South by Southwest. It was an amazing experience, and I'm going to share with you some of the learnings today. And I already see some questions in the chat, so I'm glad we'll be able to answer those as we go. But again, I'm going to walk through a sample pitch deck, a template that we have, and after the presentation, I know the NASDAQ team is going to share a link to a blog post on Medium that we have that shares, kind of reiterates what I'm going to go over today, and and also has a template that you can download and modify. I would say, again, the format that I'm going to go over is fairly standard. When I say it's the thing that investors expect as you're going into the fundraising environment. So again, first, not using, you don't have to use this format, but this is like really a block format, like a sketch of your first your first slides. So again, it's your cover slide, putting your name and logo on there, a clear tagline. So thinking about, if you can't articulate your organization, are you I wouldn't use a tagline such as, I'm the Netflix of animation movies, or whatever that may be. Don't relate it to another company. I would say I'm a online marketplace for streaming videos, right? And that's a clear, or the online video marketplace, underneath having the longer description, right, of an online marketplace for videos, bringing, let's say, animation to comic book lovers alike, or something like that, right? And you can having that as your cover slide. The next slide is typically the problem slide. Sometimes in some formats, again, relates to the United States in terms of flow, but the problem slide is a number. It could be percentage, or absolute number of people, or dollars. And again, this doesn't relate to the dollars spent. A lot of people confuse this for the market slide, which we will get to soon. But this relates to the problem, the magnitude of the problem, and a sense of urgency. So an example that I usually give, and it's clear, right? Let's say your solution is medicine, right? Well, putting here the number of people that get sick every day, every year, right, shows the sense of urgency and the magnitude of the problem. And then also, another way, if it's not absolute people, is putting the cost of not acting, right? So example, if we don't develop this solution, will X amount of dollars be lost? Or will X amount of, if you're looking at climate, right, will X amount of acres of land, if it's a solution related to forest fires, be burned, right, and so on and so forth. The problem should relate to the pain not having the solution creates. Again, following that is the solution. So you can see how the natural flow, it's saying, this is my business, this is the problem that exists in the world, and then right after that, saying, this is my solution. So for us, we created the initial company that I pitched before. It's called Alex Anyone's Learning Experience. We pitched to South by Southwest, and in problem, we were saying that many people end up being stuck in jobs, and that it was about 33% of people coming out of college were actually underemployed, so they had trouble finding work, and that we were the place to skill and reskill to kind of upgrade their talent. So you notice you mentioned the problem, and right after you mentioned the solution. There are one version of this is to actually I like putting my product right out there. Don't describe it in text and just talk about it. You want to dive right in and show that you actually have a working solution, if you do have a working solution here. Again, the format of this deck, just to caveat that, is one that is designed to be presented. Sometimes I say the leave behind version of these presentations it usually has more text on it and covers what you would say, but this version of the presentation is something that you would present. The next is the business model. So again, this covers who is paying for what, the transfer of funds. So let's say customers, right? Your customers are paying $7 per per individual, or or $7 per unit per month if this is a subscription, and the company is delivering what good or service, right? For us, it was saying, okay, we're charging customers $6 per month, and what we're delivering is on-demand learning curated to their background, right? And that was what we did. The next, after talking about how you charge, next is talking about the market. And this is where you get to the number of people and dollars. And this one is a little bit more of an art than a science. And what I mean by it is there's different ways to set it up. And you notice I made 3 levels here. The first level is called beachhead. The second level is sometimes referred to as SAM, or service addressable market. And TAM is total addressable market. And I'm going to give a little bit of color. Usually when they're referring to these numbers, when you're sizing any one of these markets, what they're looking for is a absolute number of people and number of dollars. So that's what I like to put here is, let's say this is 5 million people, and maybe the product is $100 a person per year, right? This number again is per year. It's 500 times 5 million people times $100, and you put 500 million as your number in your beachhead market. You might be wondering, before we continue, what beachhead means. Beachhead is the term for the first niche of customers that you would sell to. So that where the term comes from is in pirating or for people at sea. Imagine you are a startup, and your startup is a boat, right? And you're trying to find a path to shore, but the shore is rocky. But the path to shore is we're on land where there's stability of your business. And beachhead refers to that area on the beach, right? Necessarily that you can anchor and get to stable ground. So that's why we use beachhead market. It's your startup's a little rocky, and it's moving around in the water, but to get to stable land, you have to establish clear, repeatable business models with this niche community. And then you will grow to other communities. So the serviceable addressable market is the next set of people that community that you would service. And then total addressable market usually is the total set of people across the US, right, that would fit in that market. So I'll give a clear example of this. Let's say, and I know I'm jumping around and using different examples, but I know there are different types of entrepreneurs on this call. So let's say you're a service that we have a fake startup in our training that we talk about called Super Socks. And one of our beachhead markets we talk about is durable socks for construction workers. It's very specific, right? It's if you were selling socks to construction workers every year, that's a specific set of people. It ends up being around 6 million people per year. So you multiply what they would buy, what your product costs per year, and then that will give you your beachhead market. Your serviceable addressable market is the next size of that community. So let's say after you service people in the construction market, you're going to expand, let's say to running. Right? And then this includes construction plus running. And then total addressable market is everyone in the United States that wears socks if your company is selling socks, and so on and so forth. So that just gives you an example of how you would structure that. There are different ways to slice these numbers or split them up. Your beachhead could be your target group in a certain country, in a certain state. And then let's say your total addressable market focuses on all of the United States. Again, I know I'm spending some time on this slide, but many founders calculate this incorrectly. They just look online for how much money is spent in AI or if it's a fashion product, like what's being spent on all clothes, and that's not an accurate number to put here. Again, using the very standard method is number of people that would buy your product times what the product costs, and that is the number for your market. Again, total addressable market rarely uses global numbers. If you're in the US, it usually uses just the US. Or if you're in another country coming to the US, your beachhead should be the country you're in, or the region you're in. And then you can expand, so on and so forth. So I could talk about this at length, but we'll move on. Next, you want to talk about how you're going to reach your customers and your go-to-market, your channels that you have. This is one of those slides where I usually put logos from the channel partners that I have, and just looking briefly at the different types of partners here. You may have a partner, let's say you have a partnership with Whole Foods, or you have a partnership with, if we're sticking with the sock provider, right? You may have a partnership with a CVS or a Walmart or TJ Maxx, and they're a distributor, and that's the type of relationship investors are looking for here, because they're understanding that even though you're creating your product, how are you going to reach your customers? For those with digital products or services, yes, again, maybe you may say, oh, it's SEO and organic, and I'm paying for ads. That's great, but they're looking for investors are looking for, particularly on this slide, an unfair competitive advantage. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you are an individual, and we'll use one. I was talking to a founder in the food space. She's making a snack product that is doing very well. She has a partnership with Whole Foods, and she put Whole Foods on this slide, and that's great. You want to showcase the partnerships you have. She also has someone on the team that has deep relationships in the food space with a number of distributors and providers, such as HEB, Mars, Kraft, and they are actually considering being investors and backing, and that's a great sign. Next, what you want to do is detail your competition. Usually it's a 2x2 here. This speaks to the startup that I was pitching. I was pitching an online portal that teaches people how to move forward in their career, and that was linking them to different types of learning. So I had schools, online schools, in-person schools, other platforms that aren't educational based. And again, the two axes, one is usually cost, and the other is usually speed. It has to be cheap. Remember, you want to be in the top right. It's the typical design. Where this came from, this 2x2 is Boston Consulting Group a long time ago, but it has become a way to represent your competition, and typically you're in the top right, and where you're either cheaper, faster, or higher quality, or a combination thereof. This is a unique slide, the finances slide. Again, it has more metrics on than normal, but I'll explain some of these. This slide is not a slide I would include in a pitch deck you're just mailing out to someone. The reason is because the numbers or estimates may change consistently as you're getting feedback, as you're closing sales for this month, and then are estimating what the next month would be. But just to explain the key things that investors are going to look for when you pitch to them in person, I'll explain them here. So one, they're always looking for a curve up and to the right. The curve of what is your either your revenue, which is, or your total revenue, or your revenue minus expenses, which is your net income, right? And they want to see over time that there's a certain velocity or a certain speed at which you're growing. I like to add milestones to each of these, because they usually ask, well, how are you going to get to $35 million in sales in year 5? Like, how do you estimate you're going to reach that? We said we're going to go global and onboard, since we were charging per employee, think about 35 million. This needs to be, let's say we're charging, anywhere from we talking about landed costs ended up being like $3.50, to $7 per employee. So that would mean this would be 5 to 10 million employees on the platform in 5 years, right? And again, you can I know you can watch this later and go over the numbers that I'm doing fairly quickly, but again, it goes back to the business model. It's how much you're charging per unit, and then I like to have a milestone underneath where the year that shows the number of customers I'm getting at that year, so I know my metric. Again, you don't have to have this on the slide. This is something I like to put on the slide, at least for me. Helps me as it helped me as a founder as I was going from meeting to meeting, and pitching to investors to show them the level of detail that I was thinking of. What they are going to expect is that your average revenue per employee, per employee, but per customer, your burn rate, which is how much does it take to run your startup per month. What they're going to ask is, what is your gross burn, which is just the total cost. Some people give net burn if they're smart and they want to, try to like underplay how much they're burning. But I would just be direct. What they're really trying to get at is how much money are you consuming per month, and then also asking how much money do you have in the bank, so they understand how many months of runway you have. So you're talking about your current burn rate. Let's say it's $10,000 per month. You have $100,000 in the bank, so you have 10 months of cash, and they just want to know those numbers. CAC is customer acquisition cost. They may ask for customer acquisition cost or lifetime value. Usually investors don't for early stage startups, because it's just too early to tell if you haven't sold, let's say, a couple hundred or even a couple thousand units of whatever you're selling to a group of customers. But as you go later on, this number is expected. It's expected that you would know this number. This impact over here is specific to startups that are impact focus or double bottom line focus. I would only include this if you're pitching to an investor that cares about those metrics. So that's something that I would keep in mind as you're moving forward. Is I had for us that we were reaching millions of learners, and then also increasing earnings potential for those learners. So there was billions in earnings because it was a couple thousand per learner, and that was our overarching goal, was to help them increase their earnings $1 billion in aggregate. That was our long goal over the next 5+ years, and that was a startup, an impact measure that we pitched. Again, this is another slide that is unique to impact startups, that people, we were delivering incremental training, and we said that it would increase earnings. So we had a source that of research that said, hey, for every incremental learning or incremental course, earnings were increasing X to X%, right? You're talking about 5 to 15%. And that's what we use to calculate how much we can increase earnings over time. This slide, again, not expected. It's not an impact investor. Don't include it. It'll just confuse them. Or it's something that if an impact is important to you, you can make the slide and put it in your appendix. But this is, I just wanted to include it in the flow. This is where it should go. Usually this relates to your theory of change. Again, an expected slide is your attraction slide. This one, you notice there's more X's in the box, but this is really to prove that you've been working really hard and you've been hitting overall measures, and that you're gaining supporters. So the logos at the bottom are usually investors, whether that be angel investors, institutions, different from your channel partners, of people that are backing you. So it's something that I would definitely keep in mind as you go forward. Another is, ultimately, and this is what every investor looks for, founders roll their eyes as they think about it, but They're looking for active users and paying customers. ARR or MRR, your average, your annual recurring revenue or your monthly recurring revenue is at the end of the day one of the most powerful metrics because it shows that that you're actually delivering a good and you're receiving payment for that good, because ultimately that's what businesses are all about. And even at the early stages, getting some revenue puts you aside from so many startups that end up being, I say, a team and a dream. And it's so inexpensive to get up and running and get ideas out there that it's expected to at least try or have some measures there. Let's say your product is in the healthcare space or a highly regulated industry. Well, what I would do is see if you can get a paid pilot, or the next metric here is, I said two things. It's paying customers, which is the ultimate, active users. So if you have a couple thousand active users, then I would put that here as well. Keep in mind, as you're thinking of active users, that the active users are all about that the next question they're going to ask is how do you define an active user? Are they signing on every day and for how long? Are they engaging on the platform? Those are all questions that you may have. I'm going to stop 1 second because I see that there are a couple of questions. I don't know. Let's see. Let's look into the chat. Okay, so I see that you have a Maria. Do you guys want to bring up some of those questions now, or should we keep going? Should I keep going?
Sure. Yeah, there might be some relevant questions, Sergio, that you can answer now. Absolutely.
Sure.
So, one question from Adrian concerning the traction slide. What do you put in your traction slide if you're pre-revenue?
Great question. So a lot of investors are going to see this as vanity metrics. You know what? Like, they make fun of it all, like people poke fun at this all the time, but vanity metrics are what you do in the beginning when you're getting started. And I would love to have you said who asked the question?
This is from Adrian.
Okay, Adrian. So Adrian, I'll poke you at the end, but would love to hear a little bit more about your product. And I'll be clear, is let's say your product, I'm gonna pick something simple to produce. Let's say it's let's say in the Black Lives Matter movement, you created a whole campaign and brand around Black Power, right? I'm just, and you were selling t-shirts, hats, and everything around this brand. The expectation that you've probably made some money is very high, right? So what do I mean by that? Maybe vanity metrics that you can have. Maybe you started a Facebook page, or you started a website and so you have number of people signed up, number of followers. Those are vanity metrics. Let's say that there is an expectation because it is maybe it's a hat, a shirt. It's a product that has a low barrier to entry. That you would have made maybe a dozen, you would have made some, you would have gotten a batch made, and you would have tried to sell them. There is before you've gone for investment. So there is that expectation. If your product is, let's say, a medical device that can be used in hospitals that is just more effective than using sutures per se, right? That you would need some sort of clearance and you would need a doctor to use it. Then it's more understandable that you wouldn't have revenue yet. How would you, to answer your question directly on that, of how would you represent traction? Well, how many hospitals do you have, signed up as partners? How many, do you have? I would proof points on your advisory slide or on your team slide. Maybe you have an advisor that is a medical professional. Maybe you have some MOUs or memorandums of understanding saying that there's a few hospitals that are ready to use your product once you've produced it. And those are examples of traction metrics that can get you to the next level.
Sergio, fantastic.
Good. Do you have another? I could keep going.
one more relevant question that
Awesome.
you have
Let's do
touched
it.
on. Yep, from Joy Deep. Hello, can you please elaborate on the difference between traction and validation?
Okay, so traction are again, the ultimate is like active users paying customers. Validate, I would say traction may validate an assumption. So I like to use the term. Validation is I guess I use the term less, but what I always look for, I do look for validation. That traction is supposed to be evidence of an assumption you're making. So example, when you're creating a product and you're like, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to make millions of dollars on this. That's an assumption, right? Your assumption is that there's a group of people that will pay you whatever you said for that product. If you have paying customers that are paying something today, you have evidence that that is true. Until you have customers paying you, that is a hypothesis that has not been completely validated, no matter what they say. So you may have a survey that says they will pay, but they haven't yet. That's still not a validated hypothesis. So I know I'm getting into minutia, but you asked about validation, so I figured I'd answer it specifically. So
Sergio, fantastic. And I'll sign off here. You can continue.
awesome. So yeah, we can dive in again. Have questions as we go or at the end, and I'll answer whatever we can at the end as well. So again, after your traction slide, putting a team slide with this is I say the logos, or this is a semi validator page, but where investors are looking for here, when you put the faces of the team, their roles and logos of where they're from, they're looking for founder market fit. And what that means is does the founder have this unique context to the industry? And I go back to that medical startup, right? If you're creating a medical device and there is no doctor on the team, somebody's going to be confused, right? Like even if, and granted, I know some people may argue that people that are come from outside the industry may be more innovative and see things differently, and that may be true. But if you do not yet have active users or paying customers, right, that are actually paying for this product, and they're really betting on the team, they're going to be looking for some insider knowledge or unfair advantage. So that's one. They're looking for knowledge, unfair knowledge of the market. Usually that someone on the investment team has been has had this problem before, either as a buyer or a seller. They're also looking for, and this is a great one, when you go back to the go-to-market slide, is do they have relationships with a network of customers, whether that be enterprise or direct to consumer. What do I mean by that? Right? If you are a company, right, let's go back to, you started a brand, focus on the Black Lives Matter movement. Maybe one of the people in your team also worked at Macy's or Jet.com or Amazon in the e-commerce space, and they know how to get your product digitally onto those platforms as soon as you create it. Well, like that's something another team can't replicate, and that's something you would want to put on this slide, that someone in there has that e-commerce experience. On this slide also, if you do have room on the right, you can make these images smaller, and if it really depends on having broader support or more seasoned advisors, I would put them on this slide as well, more on the right or below your founding team. Last portion, I say, is next steps, or sometimes your ask slide. What they're looking for is, if you're asked, you're saying, okay, today I'm raising $1 million on an X million dollar valuation, and where that's going to take me is where, right? So they're looking for over the next 6, 12, 18 months, putting in the $1 million is going to get me to maybe 1.5 million in ARR. How many users, how many networks? I put networks there, but it could, maybe it's you have to establish relationships with larger distributors. So maybe those are distributors. And then again, this is an area you can put some, again, logos of investors, and you're saying, okay, join me on this journey to accomplish this goal. And these are the investors that already have backed us. So, like, jump on board today, like, to, and we're changing the face of what we're doing, to achieve this mission and this vision. And then really that's it. Sometimes the last slide, I don't have, like, after the next step. So your ask slide is really the vision slide, I say, okay, like, if we're a company, going back to what we pitched, we were focused on access to quality education to move people in their careers forward. So we pitched, come join us on a journey of creating, a place where anyone can come to learn, no matter what they can afford, and support them where they are. Right. And that was, part of our mission and vision, was like quality education for everyone at any point in their careers. So there's a vision slide after this, and then that's the, kind of the closing. Another thing I would say, I'll take questions here, but just to not break it up. When I'm pitching, and this is standard for Techstars, TechCrunch, Disrupt, they usually start emotional, like the founder's telling a personal story. They go into the standard pitch that you saw, and they may end emotional. I'll give you an example of that. I opened saying I was first in my family to go to college. I saw the access that it gave me. It enabled me to get a great job, and then end up, supporting me to where I am today. And then you go into the problem. I'm not the only one with this problem. Like, there are X millions of people that are, struggling to get forward in their career. And then you walk through the rest of the deck, and at the end, you can close with, by creating this product, you can help people like me, or like ex customer that I dealt with, before, really change the game, not only for them, but people all over the US and around the world, right? And then you can, like, end with, like, more of a vision. So this, like, arc of emotion, logic, and emotion, is sometimes standard in the US. Sometimes knocked on by developer communities that say, no pitches, we just want to see demos. But that's a whole nother conversation. Just keep that in mind as you develop your story. This is additional questions, is thinking about, why is this personal to you? Talk about your opening with your moving moment, even though it's vulnerable. It does help to engage the audience, and then also understand who is in your audience, so you can tell a story that relates to them. So an example of that is, one of the challenges I had earlier on in shifting around my pitches. I was focused initially on access to higher education and helping people that hadn't gotten into a higher educational degree. Most of the people I was pitching to didn't understand what it was like not to go to college, right? So shifting the story to something that a little bit more of what they cared about, or someone in their family, that was more relevant to them. But I'll pause there, and I'll take questions at this time. So.
We have so many great questions, Sergio.
Okay. Yep. Absolutely.
All right, let's dive right in if we're ready. And what I'll do, we'll go through the breadth of questions first, and then the more specific case study type questions that are about specific businesses. So thank you all. Please, again, submit your questions in the chat function or in the Q&A function. And if you're feeling brave today and succinct, we can actually have you raise your hand, and you can share your voice with Sergio asking your question directly. We're very open to that and would love to do that today. So let's see. What are some common mistakes of pitching to a VC at a pre-seed level and a seed stage level, Sergio?
Got it. Do you want to go through all the questions, or do you want to just go one by one? How do you?
Great question. I think let's do one by one. Does that work?
Yep, absolutely. So, common mistakes at pre-seed and seed stage. One common is, I'm the only one doing this. No one's ever done this before. That usually signals to the investor you just haven't looked at the competition. Everybody's always done something before, and if it is truly novel, there's usually somebody who's done it and it hasn't worked yet, so you should know who they are and know why you're different, or somebody spending their money elsewhere, right? So example, if you created a teleportation machine, right, just making that up, you know okay, I don't know of a teleportation machine today. The closest substitute is flying and Zoom, skipping the trip altogether, right? The question is, like, why would they do that? Like, why would they? Those are the alternatives, right? And you should know about them, and you should know why they're going to use your product over the others. So that's one. Not knowing about. Not knowing that. I think there are a ton of little things, like having just a standard pitch deck. Like I have talked to so many founders that they just want to make 5 slides about their problem and 5 slides about their solution, and then not cover any of the other things. Like, there's a format and a formula. Use it. It's what most investors expect. Like, it's why I did this today, and why we did the blog post. Like, when if founders like give me a deck that like doesn't look in the format, like, I usually refer them to my posts and go, like, this is going to help you with all investors, not just me. So I try to do that there. So and I think those are some of the most common. I think another is asking. Another one is saying that your valuation. I also posted a post on valuations, so check that out on our website. But what that is really focused on is like, let's say you're raising $1 million at a 5 million valuation and you have 0 revenue. Just know that you're being compared to everybody else at that valuation. So that is, it doesn't mean that you can't get that amount. You may, but realize that there may be someone else who has a product in market, is making a substantial amount of revenue, whatever that is, and they may be at the same or lower valuation. And if I were to make an investment, not knowing anything else, I'd probably make it there, right? Like, if because it's de-risked, it's like lower. There's a greater chance that I'm going to get my return because that person's already on the path to making money. So yeah, I'll pause there.
Sergio, perfect. Thank you. That was fantastic. We have 2 different questions. There are actually a few questions around COVID era pitching. So, yeah, I wonder if you're ready to answer these. Let's see.
Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Determine the right desired funding amount. So I'll answer them in order. I think Bill talked about rule of thumb, 20% is sold every round. That is true. So what that refers to, for everybody typing or listening, that every round you're raising, it's assumed that I use the 1 million. I'm raising 1 million on a 5 million valuation. That's 20% of that business, right? Assuming a post money valuation of 5 million. That is true. Usually earlier on, there's this a little bit of a fight, because early stage startups, like when you go into an accelerator or incubator, they're valuing you somewhere between 1 and 3 million ish, right? That's a competitive set of startups. Then when startups are raising out the gate, I think a lot of people want to be valued. In the US, I've seen like basically the minimum I've seen is like 4 to 6. It's like this magic. But when you're not making any money, it's all relative, right? Like it's really expensive for the alternative. So that is, but that is right, that the rule of thumb. But what I wouldn't do is, I think there's another mistake early stage founders make, that they just take the valuation they want to be valued at. They divide it by, or they take the amount of money they want, they multiply it by 5, and they're like, that's our valuation. And that's not really how it works. What we're looking at is, let's say you're making $1 million ARR, right? And we're looking at your valuation divided by what you're making. So if you're making 0 or very close to 0, that number is really big. And that's effectively the price of your business. So if your business is valued at 10 million and you're making $1 million a year, that's 10 million divided by $1 million is 10, right? That's the price, right? Kind of like that's the price for a slice of your business called the multiple. If you simplify it, right? Let's say you're raising 5 million. Let's say if you're not making any revenue, and even if you're valued at 5 million, which is half the other, or let's say you made $500 last month, or you take the 500 times 12, or we can use easier numbers, but let's say over annually it's like $5,000. 5 million divided by $5,000 that you would have made in the year, or in ARR, that's around 100, right? So you're valuing yourself at like 10 times the risk, like relatively to the other investment. So just understand that investors are looking at multiple things, but one of them is the ratio of your revenue to your valuation, which is your multiple. But we can go on about that. I do have a post on that, so I would check that out.
Perfect, Sergio. Actually, we have someone whose hand is raised, and I think it would be fantastic to ask them to speak.
Sure.
All right, Joy Deep, I'm going to unmute you. Joy Deep, can you hear us? Can you test this out?
Hi.
Hello there. Do you have a question for Sergio?
Yes. Hi. Good afternoon. So I would like to ask you, do you think there is a thin difference between innovation and solution, or you will put in the same line, innovation and solution? Thank you for the...
Yeah, thanks for the question. So that's a good question, and I guess that's more a I don't know. I think of that as like more of an academic or theoretical question. But relating to the pitch deck, I would always have one slide for your solution, and that is the thing you're providing. Is it innovative, or is it your innovation? I think that could be described multiple different ways. I've done a bunch of research on from under Clay Christensen that wrote the book Innovator's Dilemma, and you can have a great solution that is not necessarily disruptive or innovative, but the reality is investors, they say, oh, we really want to be innovative, but at the end of the day, if you're making a lot of money and you're growing really fast, I say active users and paying customers cure all ills. That's what I like to say. So I'll give you an example of there was a startup that she's a female founder. It was registered as a B Corp, which is different. It was like in art, and not many people were like, okay, is this a necessary product? But she was closing sales with large enterprises that were paying her for this good and service. So she got investors. The reality is I think all the other things, you can argue, you try to get them perfectly, but closing sales will help you close investors. And actually, I like to say your customers are your best investors. They are giving you money, and they don't expect any equity back, and you just have to give them your product. So, but anyway, I'll turn it back to Maria.
Sergio, amazing. That's actually very helpful, and I love the real life case studies that you offer to us and anecdotes. I think they're very helpful for everyone. So hopping into the many questions that we have, what might you suggest for pitching during this time of COVID? How has your strategy changed from in real life pitching versus, let's say, Zoom or video pitching? What are some strategies that you might suggest for entrepreneurs to do?
Yeah, I think, I think probably the same as I would do not in COVID. I have to say that VCs that have been around a long time, they push and they say, oh, I expect a warm intro. I think, relating to, I think Gianni asked a question about funds looking for people of color. And I think those types of practices are exactly what blocks out people that don't have relationships like people of color or communities of color that may not have relationships. It could be women as well, like that with VCs. So I think VCs have to cut that out, but they don't. One thing I would do that helps is just being really crisp and concise in your communication. So making a standard pitch deck that is 10, 11 slides that follows the standard format. And then in your email going, hey, I'm a founder that makes X. And here, like bullet, like I achieved X revenue over X time. I have X many users. I have like lead with your like big traction metrics in a very short, like concise way. So they read it and they can react. I think that's the best thing you can do. Like there's a ton of, I don't know how many times that I get like a founder going, how are you today on LinkedIn? And I'm like, like I get so many of those. I just need you to say, I'm a founder raising X and I'm at X. Here's my deck. And then I can click on it, see it, and then like either send them send them meeting requests. Like it's just like be upfront. You don't. I know. I mean, yeah. We there's just so many people reaching out for funding that we're trying to be helpful for you too. And then also do your homework that type of investor invests in the type of startup that you are building. So I'll pause there. So COVID times, what other things would I think those are the major things. I mean, we can go on and on. Just not being afraid to, again, I think Zoom is standard now. And don't, putting more thoughtware out there and just keep sending, don't be shy about telling people your idea. I think what's interesting is early stage founders. I wrote a post called The 4 Mistakes of Early Stage Founders. One of them is pretending your idea is in stealth. It is rare that a startup should be in stealth. And there are reasons for that. But if you just are scared someone's going to take your idea in this type of environment, like good luck. You're not no one's going to know about your idea, and then no one's going to fund it because no one knows it exists. So don't be bashful, talk about it, get out there, and hopefully you'll get feedback, and that's the first form of iteration. So.
Sergio, thank you. Such great tactical advice here. Really what everyone is definitely looking for. So a quick time check. We're at 53. We have about 7 more minutes together. I want to ask everyone that's still listening and in attendance, get your questions in, regardless of whether we're able to get to them live or not. We will make sure that you'll have some answers to those. And we're going to put a survey into the chat. Please click on that and take 2 or 3 minutes to fill that out, letting Sergio know what exactly you liked about his talk, and letting NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center also know what you liked about his talk and what else we could perhaps bring Sergio on for, or other experts, what you're really looking to hear.
Yeah, and I could go down the list really quick. So I talked about what funds can do when people are funding. I would also say, for larger funds, reach out to smaller guys like us. I do not, first and foremost, we syndicate investments into startups. We do not have the Google checkbook, but if Google were to knock on our door and say, hey, do you want to syndicate an investment with us? We say, sure. So we can help both ways on that. On Tony's questions around the difference between in-person and leave-behind deck, what I like to do, and this is just my practice, is I think a deck is a living document. You should always be updating it. For a founder, it becomes the place where you store your strategy. I had an appendix with a ton of versions of different slides, and the leave-behind version, I would not just, the leave behind version usually just has more text of the key things you would say if you don't get to present it in person. So that's the difference of the two. But it's the same 10 slides. So instead of problem, as problem, I have one number, right? It may say that same number, but it may give a little, maybe 2 sentences on the context of why that matters. So that's the difference between the leave behind. The leave behind sometimes is used in competitions and things like that. But really, it's not completely necessary if you're just always pitching. I saw Puneet, what did he say? What does emotion and logic curve best replicate? Is this sine, cosine, or tangent? I'm not sure. Uh, but why did I pick this particular model? I was a finalist in the MIT 100K pitch competition. Another investor talked about the flow of emotion in the presentations, and he used that visual, and I thought it was excellent because it does dictate that. In terms of the math related to it, not sure. I couldn't answer that truthfully right now. But thank you for that. I see another question. Which situations of VCs? Great. So this is really tough. I'll give an example on this one. When should you go to VC versus an angel? And it like people like what's not standard is VCs are making investments and they expect 10x return. Why? Because you like I would say 3 out of the 4 investments great seasoned VCs make don't return any money, so it's super risky. And then those that 1 out of 4 will, of the great VCs, right, that are investing well, will return money to the fund. And what happens is they may ignore startups that are less scalable but really good businesses, really solid businesses. And angels are probably a better fit for those types of startups. So I'll get an example of that. I was talking to a founder that is developing a product selling into grocery stores. It is a great product. I don't think it's very defensible. And then it's still a great product and a great business. Can somebody replicate it easily? Probably. Like, do you need a lot of money to grow that product? Yes, because there's not a lot of technology behind it. Like, can we invest in it as a venture capital firm? Probably not the highest investment for us, but great founder and a great business. And that's probably more of a fit for an angel. So just because you got no from a VC doesn't mean you're not a great business. So also know that. Should I keep going down the list, or do you want to go? I can keep.
We're gonna go down the list. I think we have about 1 more minute. You might be able to do 1 more question, Sergio.
Cool, awesome. We were advised by an angel to ask 200K in a pitch, and then we pitched an angel saying 200K wasn't big enough. Okay. Every angel is different, right? Like some angels do 25K. Some angels are like, they call them mini VCs, and they write 100, 250K checks. It really is up to them. What they're also looking for is that they're trying to understand based on where you are. When they ask you all the questions, this is what I do. I'm like, okay, how much money are you burning? How much are you going to need to last 12 to 18 months? And where's that going to get you? I want to know that, like, as an angel, right? Like sometimes you may be too early and only raising 200, 300K. And you really need $1 million, but you don't want to give away too much of your business yet, right? There's like this dynamic, and then the angel says, oh, I only want to invest X. When the angel pushes you to invest more, that's usually a signal, just to give you guys a sense, that's usually a signal that they want to buy more of your business. And that may be a good sign, and I would talk to as many investors as possible then and get the best deal. But come talk to me, I'm happy to help you out. But yeah, I'll pause there. Thank you guys for having me. One thing I would say is, if you're, check us out. If you're a founder looking for funding, go to rebel1.com. You can click, bit.ly/fund the rebels, is where you can drop your deck, and we look at all of them. And for those that are angels on this call, rebel1/angels, or RBL1/angels. We do have a sign up because we, connect great founders to great angels as well. It's something that we do. So thanks again for having me.
Sergio, we are so grateful. What a fantastic overview. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with our community, to share your insights and your wisdom. On behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we sincerely thank you for joining us. And for those of you who are still listening, we would love for you to fill out our survey. Take just a few minutes to let Sergio and NEC know exactly how and what you need from us. And for those of you who are interested in upcoming webinars, we have one coming up tomorrow, How to Guide the Perfect Customer Journey. And next Wednesday, we're actually hosting an author in residence digital goddess unfiltered lessons with CEO of The Big Think. So Sergio, again, thank you so much for sharing what you have. I know it's been a fantastic hour with you. So many great questions from our community.
Awesome. No, thank you guys for having me. When you want me to come back and talk about pivoting, just let me know.
That happened. Great. Thanks, Sergio.
Take care. Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful afternoon, everyone.